Welcome, everyone, to our brand new podcast called Getting Deep with a PhD and a JD.
Hey, Nikki.
Hi, Kimmie. So, of course, I have a question for you.
Bring it on.
All right. So, I have a quote. I'm going to read this quote, and I'd like for you to tell me who wrote it and what was this person referring to. So, here's the quote. I have studied with great interest the laws of several American states concerning prevention of reproduction by people whose progeny who would, in all probability, be of no value or be injurious to the racial stock.
That's your boy Hitler.
Ooh.
and he was referring to the Jim Crow laws, miscegenation, one drop rule, eugenics, all those wonderful things that occurred in the United States before it did in Germany. So,
Absolutely.
Yep, that's what he's referring to.
Yeah. So today we are going to talk about Nazi Germany and their rules and how they treated the persons of Jewish heritage. And we're going to compare those things to the United States, specifically Jim Crow laws. Because if we look, we will see some parallels between the two of them. And guess what? That is not an accident.
Right. I was going to say it was very intentional.
It was very intentional. And that's what we're going to find out is that these things were intentionally patterned after each other. So there's some things in the Nazi Germany side that they looked at in the United States and they thought, oh, that's how they did that. Let's adopt that. And then there were some things in the United States where the United States folks said, ooh, they've got some great ideas. Those Nazis have got some great ideas about this. Let's think about how we can implement those in the United States. So that is what that's what we're going to talk about today.
And I think it's important. We decided that this was important to talk about because, you have to work really hard to prevent history from repeating itself. And, we hear, who I'm gonna adopt Whoopi Goldberg, that is, her approach to referencing the orange one. She always calls him who because she never wants to say his name. So with who and the political climate that we're going through here in America, and I think there are a lot of us who are aware. We are aware of the dog whistles. We are aware of what who is trying to do and preventing that from happening. By excuse me, looking at other governments that are oppressive and saying,
Right.
hey, yeah, that's a great ruler. Like, it's not by happenstance. It's not. And it's not silly. And it's not anything to take for granted. Because this is what happened with Nazi Germany. Like, he got out of, or during his stint in prison, doing his research and reading and deciding, hey, okay, yeah, look at the Southern United States. They are successful at oppressing people.
Right.
So let's see how they did it so that we can do it in the way that that I think is appropriate for the end result that Nazi Germany had, which is a little bit different from what the U.S. had.
The interesting thing in my readings, Germany actually believed that the United States, and I say Germany, and what I really mean would be the Nazi Party. I want to be very clear because the persons who are in Germany now, Germany is very, very different. I mean, in terms of like, you can't, when they even smell Nazi propaganda, they don't even see it. They smell it. They're just like, no, they stomp it out because they realize just how harmful it had been, and they also realized what could happen. So they don't even you can't do that there.
Yeah.
So the thing that was that I want to say was interesting is that in Germany, they did not the Nazis did not believe that the United States went far enough.
Mm-hmm.
But in some of the reading, there were some quotes that talked about how they said, okay, they didn't go far enough. However, Blacks were already oppressed and they were poor. So
Mm-hmm.
therefore, they believed that what the United States did in terms of the Jim Crow laws, they said, okay, well, that's okay, you know, and putting in all these prohibitions. But their question was, well, we have all of these citizens who are of Jewish descent. How can we remove them? How can we
Yeah.
remove them from our society when they have, for example, the persons who are of Jewish descent, they weren't poor
Mm-hmm.
and they weren't already necessarily oppressed in the same way that Blacks were in the United States. So
Mm-hmm.
they had to figure out how to take the tactics that we used and modify them so that they could um, really get a whole population of people to be erased from their society, because
Because
that
that
is the
was their
goal. That
goal.
was their goal,
Mm-hmm.
was a
Yeah.
complete erasure. Whereas in the United States, the goal was to oppress and to create this permanent underclass of folks based on race, so that these people would always be available to work and to do
Mm-hmm.
things to support the
The
entire
economy.
society. To put,
Yep.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
slave labor first, and then in
Jim
Jim
Crow.
Crow South, it was, you know,
So it was.
oppressed sharecroppers and everything, just like really oppressing people.
So the goal here was use and abuse.
Use and abuse. Whereas in
Mm-hmm.
Germany, it was, in
Oh, we
Nazi
just don't
Germany, it
want.
was, we don't want them here. And
Mm-hmm.
whether it's we want to kick them out, we want to get rid of their citizenship, or whether we want to exterminate them,
Mm-hmm. Because
which
I
is what
read
happened.
somewhere how, there was that discussion. There was that discussion here in the U.S. as well.
Yes,
Because there was a faction of people here in the United States that wanted to deport Black Americans to back, Africa.
yes.
Like there was a faction of people who felt that way. Obviously, they lost out on that argument, but there was that discussion there. So
Mhm.
there are so many parallels, and it was, what we talked about initially is that it was very intentional,
It was intentional.
very intentional. And the United States likes to position itself, as this superpower, but also as a beacon of light, as this society to, that serves,
Aspire to be
that
like
you
too. Yeah.
you aspire to be. But we have to remember that not very long ago it was an aspiration of oppression, violence, evil, just all of those things that
Yeah.
was that was aspiring to or inspiring to other countries like Nazi
Nazi
Germany.
Germany. Yeah.
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 Hmm.
And there's so many parallels between the two. And in my reading, first of all, I think it's important. There are two laws that I want to make sure that we discuss, because
Hmm.
these were two laws. And so there are these group of laws, the Nuremberg laws.
Hmm. Yeah.
And there were a bunch of laws, but we're going
Hmm.
to talk about the Reich citizenship law and the
Hmm.
law for the protection of German blood and German honor. And those were
Hmm.
two laws that were patterned after the Jim Crow South. So
Hmm.
the Reich citizenship law, this is
Hmm.
the law that eliminated citizenship. So persons of Jewish descent were now identified as subjects of the state. So they were
Hmm.
living, people of Jewish descent, Jewish persons, Jewish communities were living in Germany, living. And then one day they were dubbed not citizens, not
Hmm.
German citizens. So
Hmm.
the right citizenship law is the first thing. That was patterned after they asked the question, how is it that you can have the United States and you can have indigenous folks, also known as Native Americans, who did not have citizenship? Or how could
Hmm.
you have territories and their people, that are in these territories that are not considered American citizens. And so they
Right.
looked at that and the jurisprudence, and they thought about that, and that's how they came up with the right citizenship laws. They were
Mm-hmm.
patterned after the ways they figured out how to do that in America.
Mm-hmm.
And the second part was the law for the protection of German blood and German
Mm-hmm.
honor. And
Right.
this was about prohibiting the quote race mixing.
This was
And
where the
so,
eugenics comes in,
yes,
right?
this is where
Mm-hmm.
eugenics, because they said, they wanted to keep the pure German blood. So sexual relations between German and Jewish persons, this was prohibited, as well as between other
So,
folks.
so the question I have, right? So, we're talking about the parallels, but there are oftentimes different motivations. So, in Nazi Germany, the the motivation there was was there any economic motivation, or was it purely, oh, we just want our race, the Aryan race, to be on top, to be the only, to be that?
Well, that
Was that
that
the
is
only
what they
goal?
said. Remember, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, in the readings, they talked about how the Aryan race was the purest race. It was the best
Mm-hmm.
race. It was it was at the top of the quote food chain. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think there's also a little bit of the other one in terms of the economic impact, because if they could get, and this happened, if they could get persons of Jewish descent, Jewish communities to leave, then they could take their wealth and
Yeah,
take
well. Mm-hmm.
their homes and their businesses. And you see that that did happen in Nazi Germany,
Mm-hmm.
with when people first they were denied citizenship, and then, they were told that they didn't have pure blood and that they weren't real Germans. They weren't
Mm-hmm.
even allowed, based on the law for the protection of German blood and German honor, weren't even allowed to fly the what they call the right flag, or the right flag, the homeland flag, the
Mm-hmm.
German flag.
Right.
They weren't
Mm-hmm.
allowed. Jewish people were not allowed to even fly it or use the German colors.
Mm-hmm.
So that it was a way of othering them,
Mm-hmm.
demonizing them, making them the target. And therefore, the Aryan race would be supreme, and they would be able to take the wealth from the
Mm-hmm.
persons of Jewish descent. So I think it
Because
was a
they
little
would
bit
just
of
leave.
both. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a little bit of both. When here in the United States, because even when you look at the discussion about blood and heritage, um, in Germany they went back only 3 generations. So like if you had 3 generations of Jewish grandparents, then you were considered Jewish.
Jewish.
As opposed to in America, if you had, one
One
drop,
drop.
right, you were considered Black. And that was mainly for purposes of increasing the number of people basically that they can use for
Yes.
economic benefit, which
Benefits,
is,
right.
to have people that they didn't have to pay during slavery. And then, of course, minimal pay uh, during Jim Crow. Um,
Exactly.
and so once again, it was that economic benefit here in the U.S. As opposed to it just seemed to me in Nazi Germany, it was more about the blood, right? And they wanted to obviously, like you said, take their assets and things like that. But to me, it wasn't the priority.
Right. They didn't want the people to stay
Yeah.
and be a lower class.
Continual to be a
Exactly.
continual.
What
Yeah.
they wanted is they wanted them, by whatever means they could come up with, they wanted them to get out or not
Mm-hmm.
be present.
Mm-hmm.
But they also wanted to keep their goods, their
Mm-hmm.
their uh, their wealth.
Yeah.
So it's really you know not not a great way to really think about how laws are created. Oh, and also, speaking of America, you know, when you think about World War II, and you think about how we see movies and different things about how anti-Nazi,
Mm-hmm. America
America
became.
America
Yeah.
was just like anti-Hitler,
Yeah.
anti-Nazi party. The
But
truth
not
is
always.
that is not how it always was,
Mm-hmm.
because we supported a lot of their works with eugenics.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
There was a eugenics society in America.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of the um, eugenics work really looked at the Nazis and
Mhm.
how they identified like the top race.
Mhm.
And Americans actually used that work
Mhm.
to degrade people who weren't white or of pure blood, because
Right.
it wasn't even just being white, for
Mhm.
Germany.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
was
Because Jews were considered
because
white.
Jewish, yes, yes.
Mhm.
And so they had to, and that's why it was the three generations, because they had to figure out,
Yeah.
because people physically didn't
Mhm.
have that physical identifier
Like
necessarily.
that's just right off the top
That's right
that
off
you
the
can
bat.
identify,
Yes.
yeah, as
Yes,
another. Because that's the whole
exactly.
point of this is being able, that's the whole point of that's the fundamental basis for racism is the ability to other someone.
Hmm.
And the easiest way to other someone is how they look, their outward
To
appearance.
really be able to pick out, because,
Hmm.
and that's why, the other thing, so the question was, okay, because I know you talked about this earlier, how did they know who was Jewish, right?
Right.
So they
Hmm.
looked, and they actually had papers. They registered people. So if you
Hmm.
were, quote, pure Aryan,
Hmm.
you could take part in all of these different aspects of society, you
Hmm.
know. But if you were Jewish, you could not.
Hmm.
And
Right.
we're also just talking about um, Jewish folks, but the Nazis discriminated and really disliked a whole other list of
Yeah.
people. Like, I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure if I happened to be a Nazi in Nazi Germany during this
Oh
time,
yeah.
I'm pretty sure I would not have been,
Yeah.
I would not have been
You've been
permitted
persecuted. You would have
to
been
live
persecuted as well.
freely.
Hmm.
Yes, I would have been
Hmm.
persecuted.
Yeah.
Yes, as
Yeah.
well.
And I think this topic also resonates with the current climate that we have here in the U.S.
Yeah,
And this, very silly discussion about the history of the U.S. and the racist um, beginnings, the racist middle, the racist current,
the
right?
current
And
racism.
mhm, because there was a professor at Yale Law School. I'm trying to see. Yeah. So James Q. Whitman, he's the author of a book called Hitler's American Model. And in that book, he is quoted as saying, literally, America in the early 20th century was the leading racist jurisdiction in the world.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
come on. And so, words, rhetoric, all of that is very intentional. It's something that we all need to pay close attention to. And we have to learn from history, and we have to learn the idea of the greater good versus individualism. And I
yes,
think the the environment that we have now in America is, one of the causes is individualism, and how that has been very pervasive in our society of, well, it's not affecting me directly, so I'm going to have this position. And it's almost as if, you're cutting your nose off to spite your face kind of thing. You're throwing the baby out with the bathwater. All those things. It's like, okay, maybe not, but what you're doing will affect your grandchildren.
mm-hmm.
It will affect your just your family in general, your
Yeah.
community as a whole. It will affect. And I think that we're not taking that into consideration like I think that we should.
We are not remembering the past,
Hmm.
because if you think about it, Hitler rose to power. Hitler was not a particularly, when you think about school wise, and you think about, he just was not, I mean, and I believe he failed certain things. He failed
He
out of
wasn't an
art school.
intellectual.
He was not an intellectual.
Hmm.
But what he was is he was able to pick a target. And in picking a target, everybody needed a target in order to say, well, why am I not the best. Like, I am supposed to be the best. Our race is supposed to be the best. Why am I not the best? Oh, it's because of this person
Right.
or this group of
This
people.
group of people.
And so he was really able to create an other. And it's very similar to the United States. When you think about in the Jim Crow South, you had poor whites and you had poor blacks. And poor whites, the only reason poor whites could say, okay, I'm poor and I can still live and I can still be okay, was because they were told, you are poor, but you are white. And so they actually had that step up. They weren't on the bottom rung of the ladder. And because of that, you didn't see poor whites in huge masses like coming together and forming alliances with poor blacks.
Right. When realizing the policies that were in place is what was causing
it's the policies,
their economic their economic
exactly.
Yeah. And so that's, so I think that's a good segue to our call to action segment, because once again, I think that it's important for us to be an educated, informed, voting citizen.
Exactly.
It's very important to do that, and to not vote on emotion, to not vote on propaganda.
Right.
And to be very vigilant in encouraging the continued learning, the continued prevalence of our past and our history, so that it's not repeated.
Yeah.
And it's very important. We're in an election season now, or an election year, and it's important that you get out and vote. I mean, to me,
critical.
that's my call to action. Like,
it is critical. It is critical. And what I tell people, in particular young folks, because there are a lot of young people that will tell me, and that have told me, well, my vote doesn't count anyway, so I'm just not gonna participate, right? But we have seen in like the last elections where a small number of votes, that's what tipped the scales, especially with our electoral college system. A small number of votes by a group of people within a state tipped the balance, got those electoral votes counted towards one specific person. And it makes a huge difference. If you do not vote, then you have absolutely nothing to complain about. And also, someone said, well, this candidate has flaws. This candidate has flaws. You know what? Every single candidate is going to have flaws. If you think about your own, you think about your friendships, we think about our partners, we think about our parents, we think about everybody that we love, these people that we love in our lives. They all have flaws. We don't agree with them 100% of the time, right?
Exactly.
But there's a central undergirding belief structure that we have for the people we love and for our friends. That's in common. So because of that, we're like, okay, we love these people. We may not agree with 100% of what they say, but we love these people. So when we think about folks that we want to vote for, we have to think about, we can't just say, oh, I don't agree with them 100%. Who do you agree with most? Who is more likely to have policies that benefit
you,
the
in your
groups
community
that you are part of and in your community. Right?
Yeah.
And also the other thing, and this is about the call to action, is really about being aware, being knowledgeable, being educated, and also listening. Because there are politicians that will tell you they are straight up racist. There are politicians that will tell you they are straight up homophobic, that they are straight up misogynistic. They will tell you that. And people will try to
they'll hang on this one thing,
and they'll try to they will try to minimize and they will try to gaslight, and they'll try to do all these things to make you think you didn't hear what you did.
It,
But
it kind of makes
when you hear
Mhm.
it, know that you heard it.
Exactly. And that kind of makes me think about Ted Bundy, because Ted Bundy, is a serial killer for
Bringing
those
in
who may.
serial killers.
Yes. It's just like I just wanted to give an example, an extreme example, to illustrate the importance of what we're saying. That's like saying, oh, okay, so we know Ted Bundy was this prolific serial killer, right? But people who knew him before they knew he was a serial killer would oftentimes describe him as charismatic.
Mhm.
But that doesn't mean that you ignore the fact that he's a murderer and a
Exactly.
serial
Serial
murderer at
killer. Yeah,
that. Yes.
exactly.
And it's
Exactly.
like, it's just like saying, oh, but he's so charismatic. Okay, but over here, he murdering all these people.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that supersedes. Right. So you have people, yeah, like you said, they try to find these one little things to hang on to and forget about all the other things. And it's like,
Right.
no, you can't forget all the other things, because really those other things are more important. Because I would say the fact that he was a murderer was much more important than the fact that he was charismatic.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
So let's kind of put these things into appropriate context
Right. And
and
you know what?
appropriate
I
weight.
have to say this, Kimmy.
Mm-hmm.
If you see someone and they are hanging out with Nazis, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And they know they're hanging out with Nazis.
Mm-hmm.
That is a person that, even though they say, I am not a Nazi, they
Right.
don't have a problem being around Nazis.
Right.
So that tells you something about who they are. So my point is, and Maya Angelou said this, when people show you who they are, believe them the
The
first
first
time,
time.
right? And
Yeah.
that's why, when we talk about politics and we talk about, seeing politicians, and someone comes out that says, okay, they're a white nationalist, or they
Mm-hmm.
identify as a white nationalist, and the person's like, oh, well, but they were so great, and but they were talking about how to make money in this area or how to do this. If the person is a white nationalist, then you know where they sit and believe them, right? And if you
Because if
don't
they're
have a
teaching you about
problem,
money, they don't want you to get the money. Just know that.
right?
Know that they don't want you benefiting from these policies that they want to put in place that involve money. And I just don't understand. I think it's what's the psychological word? Is that cognitive dissonance?
Cognitive dissonance, yes, yes,
Yeah. And I,
yeah.
I just can't take
There's
the
a lot of
cognitive
cognitive
dissonance.
dissonance going on right now,
Yeah.
and
Oh my
so
gosh.
and,
Yes.
and so the whole idea of taking action, call for action, it's really about education. It's
Mm-hmm.
really about stopping, looking, listening, thinking,
Mm-hmm.
critically questioning,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and
Yeah.
not just accepting things because this is the way you want them to be, not just finding information and finding sources that support your cause,
Mm-hmm.
confirmation bias, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Not
Mm-hmm.
just doing that, but really looking, because I'm pretty sure that in Nazi Germany, there were people, probably German citizens, who were like, well, he says he's going to exterminate all these people, but he really doesn't mean that. The same way
Right.
in the
Uh-huh.
United States,
Mm-hmm.
when people were saying, oh, well, some people should not be allowed to procreate. And
Mm-hmm.
we did have laws that made it legal to sterilize people who were
Oh
not
yes.
considered fit,
Yes.
people who were
Mm-hmm.
considered feeble minded or not smart, or people who had been found guilty of certain crimes. In fact, I believe, being in
Because
Virginia.
because think about it, that's the other side of the coin of the whole abortion argument.
Hmm.
It's like, just as easy as you can have somebody telling you what to do with your body, once you become pregnant, then you can also have those same people restricting you from bringing a life into this world if that's the
Absolutely.
most important thing to you. And
Absolutely.
so you have to, the cognitive dissonance is just astounding. And
Yeah.
it's the cognitive dissonance and it's the individualism.
Yeah.
Those are the two problems that I think is pervasive in the US right now,
And also, I just want to mention, being from
especially when it comes
Virginia.
to our community.
Exactly. And
Mm,
one of the things I want to say, Carrie Buck. If our listeners have not and our viewers have not heard of Carrie Buck's name, I believe Carrie Buck was the first person who was sterilized based on one of these laws. And in Virginia, they passed the Racial Integrity Act in
mhm,
1924, and Carrie Buck was sterilized because she was seen as feeble-minded.
mhm.
And she was actually raped and impregnated by someone. And so, of course, she's promiscuous now. So she was actually sterilized without her consent. So, we need to educate ourselves.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we're at the 30-minute mark. So we've got to get to our favorite segment. And I think I figured out the issue with our segment. So when we get ready to sing, I think you just need to sing it all the way through.
Okay.
Because you
Okay.
break. You're like,
Tell
tell
me.
me. Don't wait for me.
I know. I do
Don't
break.
wait for
I
me.
do break.
Mhm,
Okay.
mhm.
Okay.
So don't wait for me. Just sing it through.
Okay. Ready?
Yeah.
3, 2, 1. Okay, here we go. Tell
Tell
me
me something
something
good.
good.
That was better.
I think that was better. I think that was
You still
better.
paused a little bit in the beginning, but then you didn't.
Okay, but then I
It's
didn't. Okay. I'm gonna have to practice that. I'm gonna have to
because
practice
okay,
that.
I'll tell you where it is. It's at this part. It's the tell. It's like a dramatic
It's a
pause.
dramatic. I'm being dramatic, right?
Tell me something good. Oh, I don't know what the good is in
We'll
this.
figure it out. We just practice. We'll figure it out.
No, okay, no, I've moved on to the actual segment.
Oh, still at the music
You,
part. Okay.
no, I feel you because the music is the important part. Absolutely.
Exactly.
But no, so yeah, I guess what I was saying is, I don't know what is
Okay, I do have something good that I think
okay.
is
Good.
is is really important. When I started researching this information, okay,
Mm-hmm.
I found lots of books written by different people.
Yes.
I found this wonderful slideshow timeline, and I also found curricula that have
Mm-hmm.
been created
Mm-hmm.
to actually teach about the relationship between Nazi Germany and Jim Crow.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, wow, this is very powerful because this says not only are there people out there who recognize the connection, this has been researched. And
Yeah.
they put together official teaching tools and strategies and syllabi.
Mm-hmm.
So the tell me something good is that there are people out there who have spent years researching this, putting this together. And so the general population may not be as aware of this, but there
Mm-hmm.
are people out there who have really put together this knowledge so
Mm-hmm.
that
You made
it,
it
it
available.
and made it available and
Mm-hmm.
totally made it available. So that made me feel so good because when we were
That's
talking about
mm-hmm.
this, it
Mm-hmm.
we were seeing these parallels,
Mm-hmm.
um, but it's like, do other people in large numbers, are people seeing this now? Is it being taught in schools? Probably not.
You mean like
I mean,
primary?
yeah, like we're in primary schools. I mean, we're still having people teaching about slavery being a good thing and how the
Yeah.
slaves were happy and just honored to do their work.
Girl. Mm-hmm. I
But
get so disgusted every
I
time I
get
think about that.
so
And
disgusted.
my 11th grade history teacher said out of his mouth that slavery wasn't as bad as people think it was.
Wow.
He
Wow.
literally stood up there and said that.
Wow. And did anyone question him?
Not that I remember. And this is a man who used to wear bell bottoms and butterfly collars in in the 90s. So
I
that
was gonna
says a
say
lot about him.
bell bottoms and butterfly cups. I was like, Kimmie, you were not in high school during the 70s or 60s or
Exactly.
70s.
Exactly. So that says a lot about this dude and
Yeah.
his mind. So, but we were kids. We were in the 11th grade. I mean, there may have been a few of us who were more enlightened than others, more vocal than others. But we were kids in the 11th grade. So most
Yeah.
of us just kind of sat there like, or
Like,
after
what
class,
did he
can
just
you
say?
believe what he just said? Like that kind of
Yeah.
thing. But actually going to the principal or, or maybe even saying anything to our parents. I don't recall. I don't remember there being any sort of backlash.
Because you know what the undergirding assumptions are regarding that statement? The undergirding assumptions are that we actually were better off as slaves because we were happy and we learned. I mean, that's this whole narrative,
Mm-hmm.
is that slavery wasn't that bad. It provided all these skills for people. It was, it was wonderful. It helped the economy. It helped people. The slaves were just happy. Oh, yes, master, I'm so
That is
happy.
that is so ridiculous.
That's
But
the narrative. And for
yeah.
people to say, I mean, and it's so funny. You ask people anytime you try to take away what people perceive as their freedom, people lose their minds. So the
Mm-hmm.
fact, I bet if somebody told your government teacher to
Mm-hmm.
do something that he didn't want to do, he would be so offended that people would be trying to take away his rights or stop him
Absolutely.
from doing things.
Yeah.
What do we hear? I don't want to wear a mask. It's infringing on my rights. I mean, people wouldn't even wear a
Yes.
mask.
Yes. Yep.
So to be a
Mm-hmm.
whole being that
Mm-hmm.
your life is based on the whims of somebody
Of
else,
somebody
your
else. Yeah.
life and death, whatever you're doing,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
whatever you're doing,
Day-to-day life. All
day-to-day
that
life,
stuff.
whatever you're
Mm-hmm.
doing. And for you who would lose your mind and have lost your mind when somebody asks you to wear a
To
mask,
put on a
you
mask.
think it's okay that people were happy being slaves.
Girl. Ridiculous.
Ridiculous. Ridiculous.
So okay, so look, so we're at minute 36.
Ooh.
So I know. So to tell me something good, I would agree with you. I did have that thought in my mind when I was doing the research. I was thinking like, oh wow, there's actually a lot of information out here about this.
Yeah.
So that to me means that there are a lot of people talking about it and educating themselves as well as attempting to educate the masses
Right.
about this topic. So I guess that would be most
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah.
So
I think so. I
and then
think so.
hopefully our podcast it is contributing to that. That's our
Contributing to
goal.
the knowledge and the
Mm-hmm.
understanding, the
That is
wisdom
our
that's out
goal.
there. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
All
So
right.
with that, let's go ahead and say bye to the folks. This was a good episode. As usual, comment on the post. Let us know of any other topics that you think we should be talking about, and that the general public should be made aware of. All of that stuff.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
continue to do
And
that.
and don't forget to like and subscribe. I really would love to see our subscription, our number of subscribers increase. I would
Mm-hmm.
love to see that because
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I am just enjoying this process so much, and I would love for other people to just be able to see our enjoyment and to hear and see what we're doing and what we're about. So please encourage your friends to check our podcast out. Please share us on social media. Really love that because we, want to
And remember,
definitely do that.
when you subscribe, you get notified when our episodes drop too. So
Yeah.
so go ahead and hit that subscribe button.
Subscribe.
Okay, Nikki, well, it's been real.
All right, Kimmie.
And until next week, bye.
Bye.